The calm blue skies over the Caribbean are now the backdrop for a serious geopolitical standoff. The United States is deploying its advanced F-35 Lightning II fighter jets to Puerto Rico, not for training, but as a direct response to what it calls Venezuelan aggression. Tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela have simmered for years, but this marks a dangerous escalation. The F-35s send a clear message. The U.S. is ready to assert its military dominance in the region. This move fundamentally shifts the balance of power, introducing technology Venezuela cannot match. The world is watching closely, as the standoff involves major global powers and critical oil supplies. Decisions made in Washington and Caracas could have far-reaching consequences for the entire region. Is this deployment a step toward security, or a provocation that risks war? In this report, we'll break down the history, the incidents that triggered this crisis, and what the F-35s mean for the future. We'll hear perspectives from both sides and explore what could happen next. The stakes are high, and the path forward is uncertain. What happens in the Caribbean could reshape the region and the world. Let's examine how we got here and what's at risk. The confrontation is no longer hypothetical, it's unfolding now. The U.S. and Venezuela were once close economic partners, with Venezuela supplying oil and American companies investing heavily. That changed in 1999 when Hugo Chavez rose to power, nationalized industries, and openly challenged U.S. influence. Accusations of U.S. interference, including a failed 2002 coup, deepened mistrust. Washington criticized Venezuela's human rights record and accused its leaders of corruption and undermining democracy. The U.S. imposed escalating sanctions, targeting Venezuela's oil sector and government officials, aiming to force political change. Venezuela blames these sanctions for its economic collapse and humanitarian crisis, while the U.S. insists they're necessary pressure. The conflict is further complicated by Venezuela's alliances with Russia, China, and Iran, who provide economic and military support. Russian bombers and Iranian fuel shipments have openly defied U.S. sanctions. For Washington, these alliances are a strategic threat in its own hemisphere. The result, a cycle of accusations, sanctions, and military posturing, with little room for diplomacy. The relationship is now defined by suspicion and confrontation. Each side sees the other as the aggressor. The region is caught in the middle, facing instability and uncertainty. The U.S.-Venezuela conflict is no longer just about oil or ideology. It's about power and influence in Latin America. The stakes have never been higher. The latest military moves are the culmination of decades of tension. The world is watching to see who will blink first. The next chapter is being written right now. The F-35 deployment follows a series of dangerous incidents in the Caribbean. Recently, the U.S. Coast Guard intercepted a suspicious vessel, suspected of smuggling narcotics. The confrontation ended with a U.S. military strike that sank the boat, resulting in fatalities. Venezuela condemned the action, calling it an act of aggression and a violation of international law. The incident fueled anti-American sentiment in Caracas and escalated tensions. In response, Venezuelan fighter jets began aggressive flyovers near U.S. Navy and Coast Guard ships. The Pentagon called these maneuvers deliberate attempts to intimidate U.S. forces. Each side accused the other of provocation, creating a volatile security environment. The sinking of the boat and the jet encounters convinced Washington that a stronger deterrent was needed. The F-35s are meant to reassert U.S. military dominance and prevent further escalation. The risk of miscalculation is now higher than ever. Both nations are locked in a cycle of action and reaction. The region is on edge, with the potential for conflict growing by the day. The latest incidents have pushed the standoff from rhetoric to real danger. The stakes are no longer theoretical, they're immediate and deadly. The world is watching, hoping cooler heads will prevail. The F-35 Lightning II is the most advanced fighter jet in the world, a fifth-generation aircraft with stealth technology that makes it nearly invisible to radar. It's a flying supercomputer, equipped with powerful sensors and real-time data sharing, giving pilots unmatched situational awareness. The F-35 comes in 3 versions, able to operate from runways, ships, or carriers, making it highly versatile. It can perform air-to-air combat, ground attacks, and intelligence missions, all in one sortie. Against Venezuela's older jets, the F-35 is a game-changer. Its presence in the Caribbean neutralizes Venezuela's air defenses and signals overwhelming U.S. air superiority. The deployment is a technological checkmate, meant to deter any further aggression. For Venezuela, there's no real answer to the F-35's capabilities. The message is clear. In any conflict, the U.S. would control the skies from the start. The F-35s are not just weapons, they're a warning. Their arrival marks a new era in the region's military balance. The F-35s are being stationed at Puerto Rico's Muniz Air National Guard Base, a strategic location in the eastern Caribbean. From here, the jets can reach Venezuelan airspace quickly, while operating from secure U.S. territory. This forward deployment slashes response times and puts advanced firepower within striking distance. Supporting the F-35s requires a massive logistical effort: maintenance crews, munitions, and secure communications. The U.S. is also boosting its surveillance assets, likely deploying drones and increasing satellite coverage over Venezuela. The goal, a 24/7 intelligence network, with the F-35s as the tip of the spear. Before this, Venezuela's Russian-made Su-30 jets gave it some regional air power. Now the F-35s erase that advantage, establishing U.S. air dominance. For Puerto Rico, the deployment brings both economic benefits and new risks. The island is now a frontline outpost in a potential international conflict. Some residents welcome the security and investment, others fear becoming a target. The noise and environmental impact of F-35 flights are already sparking debate. Puerto Rico's role as a strategic chess piece has never been clearer. The island's fate is now tied to the region's escalating tensions. The world's attention is focused on this small but crucial territory. For the White House and Pentagon, the F-35 deployment is about deterrence, not aggression. U.S. officials insist the move is a response to Venezuelan provocations and a way to protect American interests. The message: any further aggression will be met with overwhelming force. This is classic peace through strength, showing power to prevent conflict. Critics warned the deployment could backfire, pushing Venezuela into a corner and fueling anti-American sentiment. Some argue it risks making diplomacy even harder, and could be seen as a prelude to intervention. Supporters say it's necessary, given Venezuela's alliances with Russia and Iran. The F-35s are also a message to Moscow and Tehran. The U.S. will defend its sphere of influence. The debate is fierce, but the intent is clear. America wants to set the rules in its own backyard. The F-35s are both a shield and a warning. The stakes are regional, but the implications are global. The world is watching to see if deterrence will hold. The next move could determine the future of the Caribbean. Venezuela's response was immediate and defiant. President Maduro condemned the F-35 deployment as imperialist aggression and a threat to regional peace. He accused the U.S. of seeking control over Venezuela's oil and provoking war. State media launched a campaign to rally the population against the Yankee threat. Venezuela's military leaders announced drills and put air defenses on high alert, projecting strength despite the technological gap. Internationally, Caracas sought support from Russia, China, and Iran, who echoed its condemnation at the UN, but not all Latin American neighbors support Venezuela. Many blame Maduro for regional instability and quietly welcome U.S. pressure. The region is divided, complicating any unified response. Venezuela's diplomatic isolation is growing, even as it tries to portray itself as the victim. The propaganda war is in full swing, but the military reality is stark. With F-35s in Puerto Rico, the crisis has entered a new, unpredictable phase. The best-case scenario: deterrence works, tensions cool, and a window for diplomacy opens, though mistrust runs deep. The worst-case: Venezuela tests U.S. resolve with another provocation, risking a clash that could spiral out of control. A single miscalculation could trigger a conflict neither side wants. The international community is urging restraint, but divisions run deep in Latin America. Russia and China may increase support for Venezuela, turning the crisis into a proxy battleground. Cyber attacks, covert operations, and support for opposition groups could escalate the conflict beyond the military. The risk of spillover into neighboring countries, especially Colombia, is real. The F-35 deployment has raised the stakes, making the Caribbean a global flashpoint. The world is watching, hoping for de-escalation. The next moves by Washington and Caracas will shape the region's future. The potential for a contained crisis to become a wider war is frighteningly real. The situation demands caution, but pride in politics may get in the way. The fate of millions hangs in the balance. The coming weeks will be critical. The world holds its breath. As of September 8, 2025, the Caribbean skies are clear, but the region is on edge. The F-35 deployment is a defining moment in U.S. Venezuela relations, a bold show of force and a calculated risk. Washington sees it as necessary deterrence. Caracas calls it imperial intimidation. Both sides are digging in, leaving little room for compromise. The risk of miscalculation is high, and the consequences could be catastrophic. A conflict would destabilize the hemisphere and draw in global powers. The path of escalation is easy to start but hard to stop. Leaders on both sides face a heavy responsibility. The hope is that wisdom and restraint will prevail over pride and hostility. The fate of the region and millions of lives hangs in the balance.